July 30th. I guess talking about the emergency services building. Mike, do you want to start with this?
Mayor, could I interrupt you? Why don't we put
Sure, Aaron.
the high-tech report in on the agenda?
Sure, I can do that. We're just waiting for Carol Geiger to come on, and I think, as you all know, we had the league come in and take a look at any potential claim we would have on the building.
Right,
And the league sent representatives right away to come out and check that out. They also had a forensic engineer come in and tour the building, and the letter that you have in your packet, you should have a couple letters. One is from Carol Geiger, the League of Minnesota Cities, and then she'll be talking about the letter that the engineers from Encompass Engineering supplied to us. So let's talk about the letter, and maybe Carol, you could address that.
Yeah, he doesn't hear you.
Oh, he's not. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm listening to John and Aaron in the background here. I'm not sure really what they're saying.
There was a discussion about 2 items that needed to be added to the agenda, and I understand the agenda's been updated. One of them is a cost, a July 8th letter from High Tech that discusses costs to remedy some of the mold issues, and then the other one that we need to talk about is a Woodseth discussion.
The item number 2 is talking about the Emergency Services Center building moisture damage review.
Okay.
So, I mean, that is the topic.
Okay.
And I think both those items fall underneath there.
Great.
Okay, so are we going to wait for Carol to start this conversation, or should we just go ahead and start it?
I am in here. I'm sorry, I think I joined a little late on this and stuff too. So are you looking for me just to review the report from Encompass Engineering regarding what they found?
Well, Mike, I'll let you answer that.
Could you say that again, please?
I'll let you answer that. Are we waiting for Carol to just go over her report, or what did you want to wait for her for?
Yeah, let's go over her report and that the league had prepared, and we can talk about that. And that's really our discussion point here.
Okay. The league didn't prepare the report. This is from Encompass Engineering, the structural engineer that we had look at the building and stuff too. But when we were out there on July 13th, there were several areas of the building that were pointed out to us as issues for us to look at. Obviously, the most extensive was that south wall of the building that has extensive rot, deterioration, and mold like growing on it and stuff like that too. Other areas included with the exterior siding on the building where the trim details are on it and stuff like that too. It appears that there's been moisture intrusion there, also causing rot over the years and stuff too. You got the south wall. The canopies, where there's some rotting going on the siding along in there and stuff too. There's some minor ice damage to a dormer on the west elevation of the building for the exterior stuff. And then there were some interior areas that were pointed out to us, such as where the file cabinets had been located, the file cabinet bottoms had rusted out, mold on walls in different areas in the building and stuff like that too. The majority of the damages that were looked at by Encompass Engineering and us are, from what he's pointed out in his report, related to improper construction, design, workmanship on there that's been causing water to go into the spaces over the years and stuff too, that has resulted in the mold and the rot and things like that. And as I pointed out in the letter that was issued disclaiming coverage on this and stuff, is that the coverage that the city has with the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust does not provide coverage for these types of damages. So for the improper workmanship, construction design, and then also the damages that are a result of rot, deterioration, mold, different things like that are also not covered.
So other than a little ice damming, damage to the dormer and one other area, I can't recall what it was, the league is not going to insure anything. I mean, that's basically what it is.
Correct, yeah, there's no coverage for majority.
Carol, I've got an unofficial, I've heard comments in regards to insurability of the building. Is the building, especially after renovation, going to be an insurable building?
I am an adjuster, so I handle claims. When it comes to any questions that you have with regards to insurability, things like that, those would be conversations that you would need to have with your agent. And then, you know, they can also have with the underwriter and stuff like that too. I have not seen any in the past too, where, you know, because you've had issues and addressed them and stuff like that too, why the building would not be insurable.
Okay.
You know, if there are future damages to the building that, you know, again, we look at are a result of, you know, improper workmanship, construction, design, materials, that, and then you also again have mold, rot, deterioration, things like that occurring because of the intrusion of water from those types of things. It would be reviewed the same way, and a disclaimer would be provided to the city for those damages.
Okay, but in your, so can I ask you, in your opinion, the building should be insurable after the corrections are made to it?
Correct. I don't know why you wouldn't be able to insure your property.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so I think at the last meeting, Carol, thanks for your input there. At the last meeting, I believe that the council was not provided with that attached breakdown sheet of the cost estimate for the repairs to the building. Is that true? Aaron, Dave, John, did you guys see this breakdown before?
No, I did not. I saw the top end of it, the 28/8. The rest of it I did not see.
Okay, well, I mean, so
Chip, it was not in the packet because we got it that afternoon. It was not included in the packet.
okay, well, I believe the representation at that meeting is that there was $200,000 worth of repairs initially, plus the roof, plus any other unforeseens. Is that true and correct?
Who are you asking, Dave?
Well, I'm asking anybody, everybody. Is that the representation that was made?
Made when?
At the last council meeting on the 13th, I believe, when we had talked about this. No recall?
Hey, Mayor. Andy Pickard here with High Tech.
Hi, Andy.
So the proposal that was outlined that we're referencing had I believe four or five items within it. And I think that summed to approximately $100,000.
126 closer, I think. 126.
Yep. Then I know last council meeting, we did discuss the roof being an additional, thank you, Chip. The roof being an additional in approximately $300,000 if we were to remove and replace the roof with new.
Yep.
So that would be in addition to that 126.
Okay, Andy, what is there a need to replace the roof?
When we did our investigation, we did not see any water damage inside the attic space. You know, there is some cosmetic stuff going on up top from some ice damage and some of that, but, you know, we didn't see any water damage in the attic space.
How about the issues, it's John Andrews here, the issue from Encompass saying there was issues on ventilation with the chases up into the, underneath the roof. And I didn't see that on your list here, and I haven't heard that mentioned. What's that mean?
Sure. So we could definitely add some additional ventilation, whether that be on the, you know, top of the roof with some ridge vents, and also in the soffits and the overhangs. There's some small little vents that are in there. I think the report is basically saying that it's potentially not sufficient enough ventilation. So,
Right.
but that ventilation could be added to the building.
What's the
And
cost?
cleaned out.
The cost for doing that?
On $10,000, about somewhere in there.
I didn't catch the number.
$10,000.
10,000?
To fix the roof ventilation and the chases underneath.
So you guys, let me just talk here for a little bit. A month ago, we stopped proceeding with the remodel at the fire hall based upon some mold that was found in identified areas here. The identified correction areas here is about $76,000 to correct them. We've lost a month of construction. The building committee spent a lot of time looking at the building. Now, obviously, we've got some unforeseens and that we're addressing. But I just think it's a crying shame that we've lost a month of construction time. First of all, waiting for an insurance from the League of Minnesota to give us a claim whether we're going to collect any money or not. I don't know what that was the holdup for. If we get money, we get money. If we don't, we got to just move forward. So I think High Tech has done a pretty good job of outlining their costs for what they've identified. And we certainly want them to not stop looking for problems. You know, I want them to dig into it, and if there's anything else, we need to correct it. But it's $76,000 to correct the problems that we've identified. Now, there's talk about tearing it down and building a new fire hall. I don't know what that budget number is, but it's going to be big. But this committee, the council approved, Chip, the fire chief, agreed to the job as we move forward on. And now it seems like we're trying to change course. So that's what I want to talk about. At the end of this meeting today, I would like to resume construction based upon these change orders and encourage High Tech to look into any other problem areas and address them as they're moving forward. But I'd like to have some conversation with that, so go ahead.
So Dave, I'd like to address two of your comments. The first of which is, why did we stop construction? The reason we stopped is because we took a measured approach to say, okay, if we keep fixing things in the building, then we don't have any evidence to go back and support a claim. And the purpose of pausing things was so to give our insurance provider and the forensic architect an opportunity to finish their report. That's why we did that. The second item is, right now, out of the chute, you know, before we have really a lot of progress, you know, by my math, if I add in the $10,000 for addressing the roof, which is a different solution than what the league is recommending on page, or the engineers are recommending on page 5 of their report, we've got $136,600 minimum of change orders right out of the chute. You know, my view is some of these issues were brought up and said, you know, we think we have some old issues, and why didn't we know that before we got why are we having this level of change orders right out of the chute on the project? If you read the report and you go through it, the entire report says, in a nutshell, it says the reason we had problems with the building is because we had improper construction techniques and the quality of the building. It wasn't because anybody didn't do anything. I mean, the problem started when it was built. So there's two major issues in here that I think we're kind of glossing over. One of which is the roof, And the second is which is the slab the building is built on. The engineers cite in their report, there was no evidence of a vapor barrier in the floor that was causing some of the problems. So I'd like to hear High-Tech's resolution for that issue.
Go ahead, Andy.
Andy Pickar again here with High-Tech. So I guess my understanding of the report was that, you know, they didn't know if there's vapor barrier underneath that slab or not. And I believe to this date, we don't know that. In order to determine that, we'd have to cut a hole in the slab and see if vapor barrier was placed or not. So yeah, if there is no vapor barrier under there, you know, there is some measures that can be placed on top of the slab to mitigate it, but I don't know that we have an answer.
Andy, did you figure coatings on all the floors on top?
No, that area of what would be the south part of that building would be carpet, I believe, on majority of that. So
Okay, left alone carpet. Okay. So standard construction procedures of 25 years ago or so in sandy soil like this, was vapor barrier a required element? I don't even know the answer to that.
yeah, it should have a vapor barrier underneath that slab.
Okay, even 25 years ago standards.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that matters, but so we could address that and put a barrier on the top of the floor, even underneath carpet, we could fix that, you know, if we thought it was a problem.
Correct.
The other thing, Mike, to correct you a little bit on that 136,000 that you said, there's $50,000 for mold mitigation if needed, and it's an allowance. But if we remove all the mold areas in the buildings, I think that, and Andy, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that is a number that it was just an allowance number in the event of.
Correct. We walked ServPro through the building to review the conditions after it was opened up. So that includes some abatement of some certain areas that weren't going to be removed per that proposal from July 8th. But it also includes testing, air quality testing of the entire building to ensure at the end of the day that it was, you know, there was no mold in the air. So.
And when would that be done? After construction is complete?
Correct.
Okay, so is that comparable to the test that I had done 2 years ago by ServPro? That was, I think it was $543 to have that done. Is that a comparable test? They told me at the time that that was their state-of-the-art testing method.
I don't know, Dave, what they did or back in the day there. So
okay, well, whatever, and hopefully things have gotten better. But I mean, that was a fraction of what the allowance is at the time. Okay, so realistically, even with the soffit repair that's required, it's $86,000 in additional cost plus something for an allowance for mold mitigation. I think $50,000 is pretty excessive for that, but there's nothing wrong with leaving a little cushion in there.
Dave?
Yep, go ahead, Aaron.
Andy, have you seen this report that we have here?
The one from Encompass?
Yeah?
Yes, I have.
You have, okay, good. Is there additional things you should check before we say this 136 or whatever is a final number? Is there additional things you need to look at?
Yes, I would recommend, if you're asking my recommendation, if we were proceeding with the renovation, I would think that we would want to open up majority, if not all the walls in the building to make sure we eliminate all mold, because there is so much water that has came through that building. I think it would be in everyone's best interest to open up all of the walls, make sure we know what we have.
And Andy, would the technique for doing that be like take the bottom 3 feet or so of the wall and open it up? Because that's primarily where anything would show up, correct?
Mayor, I would recommend taking most of the walls out and opening it up.
All the way up.
Yep, and redoing
Okay.
it.
So that sounds like you've kind of thought about that a little bit. Is there a number that goes along with doing that also?
Yeah, I mean, if you're throwing a ballpark number, I'd say it's another $100,000 that you're potentially
Be
putting in
talking
there.
250 in rough, not round numbers.
Completely, total, yes.
Well, Aaron, I argue that 250 because in my math that is 186,000 additional. So I want to try to keep this as realistic as we can. So 186, and that is opening up the walls and no remedy yet, depending on what you find. Right? I mean, that's just exposing any potential problems.
Correct.
Yeah. So we're talking about 200 grand or something that we got a
That's 100.
chance to do it.
Mayor, I have a question.
Okay, well, yep, John, go ahead.
Do we have a feel for what the life of the building would be after it's renovated, number one? And number two, are some of the deficiencies that Encompass found, such as the flashing, not going over the brick, et cetera, are those things that you think can be remediated in the things you've mentioned?
Well, I'm sure that all the flashing, and I'll let Andy speak for that, but I mean, that's part of the $76,000 cost is to fix all that. Andy, you go ahead and address that.
Yeah, specific to that flashing on that south wall, obviously a poor detail and install from the prior contractor, but we would be, as part of this, was tearing down that entire wall and redoing it and doing it properly.
So it's remediatable.
Yes.
And that is true with the garage door headers also, Andy. That was a poor flashing application, and you're going to redo that whole wall, correct?
Correct. Yep.
And any estimate on the life of the building after we do all this?
At the end of the day, it's still, the building is, you know, still the same age, no matter what we do to it. You know, I would guess we'd get, 20, 30 years out of it still. But, will it still have the guts and the foundation that potential have issue? Yes. I mean, it's still the same building. We're going to fix the issues that we have, and opening it up is going to help because we're going to be able to see, what's in all these walls and address it. So, but that all goes back to, are we replacing the roof? Are we, how far are we going with it?
I don't see any need to replace the roof at all. I think there's some areas that we have to address. I believe in your original estimate, you figured some money for addressing some areas. Whether that's enough or not, arguable, but I don't think we want to neglect anything in this project going forward. But I believe that, we're going to be in a whole different realm if we decide to do anything other than continue on with the remodel as we discussed.
I have a couple comments here. We're not like talking to buy a new pickup for Ted. I don't know if everybody can hear me all right, but I really don't like that's 10,000 here, and that number's pretty solid. We've had a lot of projects in the time that I've been here, and very seldom do they come in dead on to the numbers that have been proposed or estimated early on. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But before we do absolutely anything, I want to see a spreadsheet that encompasses every possible issue that we could have with this building. There's no way that we're going to sit here today and agree that it's 10 here, 5 there, or put Andy on the spot and ask him questions that we should be making judgment on our own. The building was built in 96, 93 or 96, somewhere in there, and we put $1.5 million into it since then. We put one roof on it already, and now we're talking another roof. Now I've heard that rafters are centered on 3 or 4 foot, something like that. We've talked about ripping the whole south wall down, okay? Now we're talking about gutting all the walls, the insulation. Usually you start a project like this when you've got a solid building and you work on the inside. I went through the cost estimate, and you know, usually you think you're gonna build a building that requires low maintenance, and I notice there's all sorts of new wood dormer and paint going on the outside. That isn't gonna last very long. I just think that when we get done here, we're gonna have over $3 million into a building. And who's gonna deal with this in another 10, 15 years?
Well, Dave,
I think, yeah, when you look at,
100% disagree with you.
that's fine, you can
We
do it.
spent
When you look at the cost estimate, of what we're actually doing here, we're putting $163,000 into moving electrical stuff just to make it work. That's a lot of money. And this is nothing for you, Andy. This is just the numbers, the way they roll up. Fire protection, $140,000. New HVAC, $206,000. I mean, it seems like it's just a waste of money to put all of that stuff into an old building that's nothing but problems, and we have an issue with the floor. And I get the fact that someone says you can just put poly over the floor, but that doesn't seem like a permanent fix to me. So I would like to hear, like I said earlier, I'd like to see some sort of a detailed cost estimate that says this is the max, this is the most that we're gonna see. And I'm not sure that anybody's gonna be able to do it. But I wanna see the details of every different item that's in there that we have to fix, because it's gonna make the picture look worse than it is. And then I'd also like to hear from Chip on what would happen if we'd stop the project right now. What's the impact to the city, to his services, and find out if we built a building that requires no maintenance and would last probably 40 to 50 years without having to do anything to it. I think it's a big decision. I don't think we lightly just throw numbers around at this stage of the game, but we better make sure that we're going down the right path. And I don't know that anybody has the right answer for this right now, so.
Okay, well, Chip, let's let Chip talk about it. Have you looked into buildings or looked into any costs or anything, Chip?
Sure. Sure.
Chip, are you there?
Yep, I'm right here. I just came up here so you can see me. So,
Okay.
as requested by the council, I did go out and do.
Wait a minute, let me stop you, Chip, hold it. Did the council request that, or did Dave Schrupp request that? Told you to move forward and look into building options.
Council directed me last council meeting to do that.
Okay, I don't remember being a part of that. I certainly remember Mr. Schrupp telling you to do it, but, okay. Was there a motion on that, or just a?
I don't know, Shar, was there a motion on that?
It was a suggestion.
Yeah, it was.
It was a suggestion. There was nothing more or less to it.
So
Okay, go
as
ahead, Chip.
Okay, so to answer Mr. Schrupp's question, how does this affect our operation? Yes, we right now are operating out of the apparatus bays only. We don't make entrance into the remodeled area, or the construction area of the fire hall, just because of the mold that is right now airborne. So like I said last time, I did contact Mike Anglin from WSN because we've worked with him in the past. He has prepared a presentation, since you've heard of me and talk enough, but he does have a presentation that he's going to present to you to just talk about the other option of building new. So if Mike, you want to come up?
Good morning, everyone. Mike Anglin with Woodseth. Thank you.
Morning, Mike.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. First of all, I'd just like to say that certainly acknowledge and respect the process that the building committee in the city of Cross Lake has gone through over the last couple of years, and a lot of thought and careful planning have been put towards these building projects. When demolition took place on the existing building, what was discovered within those walls and around the existing building certainly changed things. And I certainly agree with the process and having the opportunity to really take a hard look at this building and carefully consider what the right investment is for the city of Cross Lake. We put together a presentation this morning. This is a lot of work had been done already as part of the building committee process. And so fire chief and myself and others revisited this. So we were able to revise the design and put together the presentation for you today. Go ahead, thank you. So the first slide here, the new fire hall design. So as the fire chief mentioned, receiving city council direction, maybe it was a recommendation just to be clear, but what we took a look at was the fire hall precedence. We took a look at different fire halls. We again analyzed the building program, took a look at the building design. We also took a look at this within the context of the existing site. That is slightly different, if you recall, from when we were working with the building committee. And then we also took a look at it from the standpoint of construction sequencing. So we really wanted to take a look at this within the context of reality. You know, there's an existing building there, there's the EMS building. How do we preserve that asset? And then how do we work with the existing site? And so that was what the fire chief and myself and others took upon as our task. So this is just a list of few of the precedents that we utilized. Red Lake Fire Hall, Lionel Lakes, Prior Lake, there's a lot of different examples. But every community is different. We certainly recognize that. And so what we're presenting to you today reflects what is right for Cross Lake. These are just some images and examples of what we took a look at. This is a floor plan. There's some building sections that take a look at the overall height of the building and the apparatus bay. So we really wanted to do a good job, a thorough analysis of taking a look at what has been done recently. But what we've discovered is that although they may have done certain things within the last couple of years, there are other design approaches that really ensure more efficient response time in firefighter safety. And so we certainly did learn and took some design elements from other fire halls, but we, again, definitely made it more about the Cross Lake firefighters. This is some images of examples of other fire halls. The important thing to note in this slide is also part of a conversation we had with the building committee a year or so ago, and it talks about the building type. And so as you all have been talking about, you know, what's the right investment for the city is in looking at this building. You know, we're talking about a fire hall that is a specific building. You know, there's a specific use. And so as you can see from these images, we're looking at steel joists, we're looking at CMU walls. And so oftentimes these buildings are constructed in a certain way so that they can endure. There's longevity with these buildings. There's a lot of use and abuse. You know, this is a very heavy commercial style building. And so that's why we included these images just as an example for you. Thank you. So we'll move on to the building program. What we did was we established the priorities for the City of Cross Lake firefighters. We took a look at the department operations analysis. So we're taking a look at equipment inventory, the space needs analysis, and establishing that new facility program. A lot of great work has been done, even with the design of the existing project, the remodel project. A lot of careful thought has been put into this. And so really, again, it's just a carryover of what we've been doing together over the last year and a half or so. On the right-hand side there, as you all are aware, you've made some investments with other consultants, and that's towards the right. That identified a certain size building. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, that just reflects what we had talked about with the building committee. And so, again, really building upon a lot of what you've already invested with other consultants, but we're looking at right now and also into the future. Thank you. So the building design here is what the fire chief and myself have put together. And so we have a main floor plan, and then there's a mezzanine. So the floor plan that you see, I'm looking over here on the left-hand side, is the main floor plan. And on the right-hand side of that sheet, that is what is more of a utility type space. It's a mezzanine. If you could please go to the next slide. Thank you. Here's just an enlarged view of that. So what we have are 5 bays within the apparatus space. So again, taking a look at the existing inventory of the fire department, But then the important thing to note is that we've arranged spaces to where when firefighters coming in after being out on a call, there's a major emphasis on how you come in. There's a dirty bathroom where then firefighters can come in and shower off very harmful cancer-causing carcinogens. Maybe it's asbestos or whatever the case may be. And this is very standard and typical for all fire halls. And then there's a decon room where then all of that equipment can be washed and prior to being put back into the turnout gear space. Also, you'll see that the radio room is directly off the apparatus bay. There's a storage space, and then the self-contained breathing apparatus, there's a space for that as well. And then access that's direct into the fire tower. All of these spaces are located directly off of the apparatus bay. With the new layout, we have the advantage, the flexibility, the width to work with where we can make that work. And so that's a very big advantage to a new design, that it allows you to have doors directly off that apparatus bay into very specific spaces that, again, can increase response times and then also ensure and promote the safety of firefighters. At about the middle of the top portion there's a wall and there's a door. That's really the separation between the dirty space and the clean space. And so again, in working with a new layout, we were able to clearly create that, so that again, that just ensures the safety of all inhabitants within the building. From the administrative side of things, we do have a fire chief office, another office, and then there are some sleeping rooms, public restroom spaces, exercise room, day room, and then a training room. All of these are located on the main level. Yep, and the overall square footage of this main floor, it's in the bottom of the page there, but it's 15,654 square feet. And so that is very similar to what we had collectively proposed about 1.5 years ago. And then it's about 1,000 square feet or more of what is currently designed as the remodel. So it's similar in size, but again, it's just a much more effective plan due to the flexibility or the opportunity that we have with a clean slate, so to speak. On the upper level, there is what we're identifying as storage and training. And if you could please go back a few slides to the photos that we had under precedence. The slide on the left is an example of what that is. That mezzanine, you can see the openings that are located above. And what that allows is some additional opportunities for training with the firefighters, as well as storage up above. And then if you could go back to the plan, please. Yep, thank you. And then we have the mechanical spaces located above, compressor, and then there's actually access to the fire tower there as well. So the fire tower is a dual purpose. It serves for training. You can dry the hoses out in there as well, and then it allows you to have access up to the mezzanine space. The advantage here as well from a mechanical standpoint, the longevity of this building and this asset for the city of Cross Lake, it allows you the opportunity to have mechanical equipment inside, and so it's protected from the elements, and also electrical being located up there as well. So there's, working with that clean slate again, you're able to design a building, design electrical mechanical systems that can be, you can control the environment in which they're in. Existing site design. So here's an aerial image, of course, of the existing site. The advantage here, we're able to maintain the existing EMS building. We can maintain the existing helipad, the existing utilities. Site access is already located here on the site. We can maintain the existing apparatus bay while we're constructing the new building, and I'll give you some imagery to understand what I'm talking about there. So when we say maintaining existing utilities, there's 2 wells on site. There's the electrical on site. There's the generator. All of that would be able to stay in its current location. And so as we're discussing this, High Tech, myself, and the fire chief, you know, we're seeing opportunities for some cost savings versus, if you recall, about a year and a half ago, the building committee, it was for a new site. And so that would require, of course, new site access and utilities. So we certainly wanted to design this building and work within the existing site to gain the efficiencies from a financial standpoint. Existing site conditions. So here is a 3D mock-up of the existing site. It's a Google image located below. And so that's the existing building as it is today. This would be the construction sequencing. So what we're proposing is that the existing southern portion of the building would be taken down. The apparatus bay, the existing apparatus bay, would remain in place in order to provide us with that building site for the new building. And then the new fire hall then would be constructed south of the apparatus bay. That would create an empty area between the EMS building and the new fire hall that could be converted into parking that would be situated along the north side of the new firehouse, south side of the EMS building. And that would allow for direct access into I call it the more administrative side of the fire hall. So here's a bird's eye view that allows you to take a look at where the new fire hall would be. The darker areas represent what would be new bituminous. The existing bituminous or driveways access would remain. So there would be some site work, but it would be relying heavily upon the existing infrastructure that's there and site access, as we mentioned. Here's just a view of the fire hall, and this is obviously just a very preliminary sketch of what this could be. The reason for including this just is also talking about construction type. What we're proposing, what I'm proposing is a precast structure, tilt-up walls. That is very advantageous for a lot of reasons. There's the efficiency of construction from a scheduling standpoint, the durability of the material itself, the energy efficiency. It satisfies all energy codes, and from a just enduring and longevity of the building, from a keeping water infiltration out, air infiltration. It's been a very successful building construction type that I've used on a lot of, I call it heavier commercial buildings. There are some design elements that we understand we need to be cognizant of and try to have it fit within the vernacular of the area, Cross Lake community, and then also trying to incorporate some architectural elements that tie into the existing EMS building. So we don't want the two buildings to be too far apart from each other. We're trying to have them be somewhat cohesive. Firefighter safety, we mentioned priorities. So there's a lot of conversation when you work on a fire hall regarding firefighter safety. Some of these items we've already talked about with the floor plan and the overall design, and that is dirty versus clean areas. Again, this new floor plan opportunity allows us to effectively lay those spaces out. Ventilation systems with mechanical, it offers up some more opportunities for training, decontamination, and equipment storage. So this is the City of Cross Lake facility. As a licensed architect and working on this project with you, it's my duty as a licensed professional required by law to have this conversation with you, talk about this existing building, what has been discovered upon opening these buildings up, or the walls up. What we found is not only a health concern with the building occupants, it's also structurally concerning as well. I agree with what Andy Picard said, very much that it's my recommendation as well to open up these walls and see what else is in this building. This report that we discussed earlier today, from an insurance standpoint, identified just what was opened up. It did not take a look at this building holistically. In recent projects I've worked on, in 2 instances, I've worked with Ron Intertech and I've worked with their industrial hygienists. They come on site and they'll take a very thorough analysis of a building. Their recommendations and their their deliverable is quite an extensive report that really gives you all of us a very clear understanding of what this building has. I would recommend that the city of Cross Lake consider this if they're even considering reinvesting into this asset. I do have a contact, but certainly there are a lot of specialized firms that provide this service. The other thing, again, from a firefighter safety standpoint, I mentioned structural. You take a look at those headers and you took a look at all the water damage that's occurred. It's not only on the inside, but it's on the exterior as well. And having walked through that a couple of weeks ago myself in person, it certainly opens your eyes when you open up this building. Unforeseen conditions. I have concerns, and I would certainly recommend that you continue to really have a thorough analysis of this building. And again, as a licensed architect and working on this project, I have a responsibility to not only the city of Cross Lake, but all that use this building and the general public as well. These are images that I took when I was on site, and it was all that I needed to see to feel this way and offer up this recommendation. Priority, again, what is this building that we're talking about? And I feel that it's important to keep this in mind so that when we talk about what's the right building, what's the right materials, how long do you want to have this building last for the city of Cross Lake, and what kind of building, what kind of interior environment do you want to provide for your firefighters? And I'll take any questions that you may have. Next steps is a question that I have, but certainly the question is, what is this going to be from a financial standpoint? What's the impact? Also, what does this mean for construction schedule? How does it impact the firefighters currently for the city of Cross Lake so that they can continue to do their job? So those are next steps that seem to be appropriate in my mind, but I'm certainly open to answering any questions, and thank you again for your time.
So Mike, do you have any kind of a budget number for what you're talking about doing?
From a construction standpoint, Mr. Mayor, in talking with High Tech, taking a look at the efficiencies with the site, we are talking about 225 a square foot approximately. We have not had-
225 a square foot.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is correct. Yep. And
So
we
you're
have
3.8 million or something is what you're thinking.
3.5.
3.5 out of the gate.
That would be for the construction, correct. Having said that, High Tech and myself, Woodseth, have not had an opportunity to take a look at this. We felt it was premature prior to meeting with you, but we're certainly ready to provide those numbers for you in figures.
John Andrews here. I have two questions. Number one, I'd be interested in what the public is interested in, because this is obviously something that's going to affect everybody's taxes, et cetera. So it's an important decision for the city. And the second is, maybe Mike, to you, Mike Linus, how does this translate into individuals' increased taxes in terms of bonding or whatever we'd have to do?
Well, I can answer the question on bonding. If you're looking at issuing bonds to make up the gap in what we've already allocated to this building, let's take a step back here. Our original construction allocation was 1.4 million for the renovation of the fire hall building. So if we just can agree to disagree that $200,000 of additional stuff above that would be reasonable, we're at 1.6 million. We would pay cash for the difference on that. If you were to go with a new building, you've got two options. We could likely finance it the same way we did the one you're all sitting in right now, or we could pay cash for it. We have the ability to do either one. If you're looking at financing it, you'd be looking at, in big round numbers, you'd be looking at about a $2 million bond issue for a capital improvement program like we did the building you're in. if you look at today's rates, your annual payment over 15 years at 2% interest would be about 160,000. If you went 10 years, it'd be, about 225, 230,000. But today's rates are below 2%. If you remember when we issued bonds for the building, the new building, we had a net effective interest rate at about just slightly under 2%. I did some checking with some other bond issues for similar projects, and I'm seeing bonds issued in the $2 million, $2.5 million range. Their net effective interest rate is about 1.6%. I know Little Falls just did a project, and that's the rate they received. If you were at 1.6%, your payment goes down by about $10,000 in both scenarios. So the question that the council needs to ask, it's not a question of affordability. Because we have the ability to do either one. Totally within our bonding capacity, totally within our cash reserves to do either one. The question is whether or not you want to do it. And that's really what we're talking about. Do you want to, just for a ballpark, the original part of the building, the emergency services building, was built and it went online on June 30th of 1994. The City Hall edition went online in 1996. They were given a 40-year life at that time. Now fast forward up to about late 2002, 2003, that's when the roof went on. It was given a 40-year life. So you need to be thinking about, are you confident that you're not going to have to touch that roof for the life of whatever repairs are done to that building, because you're already half or more through its estimated useful life. So with that said, the city can afford to do it. The question is, do you want to do it? And what's the related impact locally? There'll be no impact locally if you pay cash for it, because you're spending down your reserves. If you issue bonds for it, you'll likely be able to issue bonds at a very low rate that would be reasonable. You can find room in your budget to do either one. It's just a question of whether or not that's the path you want to go. There's some real strong benefits for starting over. There's some real strong benefits for remodeling what we have. But when you hear comments, at the end of the day, you've still got the same building with some of the same issues. You have to start asking the questions that we're talking about today. So those are my very quick thoughts on that.
Thank you.
Mike Eglin, I've got a question for you. Are you there, Mike?
Yeah, he's coming.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you kind of specifically said construction costs of 3.5 to 3.6 million, I believe is what you said on the building.
Yeah, based on the square footage, correct.
Does that include engineering?
No, that would not include design.
Okay, do you have a rough guesstimate what that would be?
5 to 6%.
So that's another, I don't know, 300,000?
Yeah, that's a rough estimate, Mr. Mayor, but we could certainly task that out and give you an itemized breakdown.
And what we have into the existing project, what we've done to date, Mike, is it around 200 grand? We had 100,000 in engineering or plans, and
For this project?
I don't know if,
It's about 100,000 for this project is what Andy just told me.
but is there any costs in the work that they've done to date? I don't know that we've seen much.
Yeah, we paid about $4,000.
And that's it?
Yeah.
I can jump in.
Andy,
They
can
haven't
you?
done a lot yet.
So our cost to date that we have, we've released contracts to our subcontractors and all that. People have proceeded with shop drawings and some of that. What we know of to date is about $25,000 with the depth and that work.
So you've got about 21,000 that has not been billed to the city yet for work that has been completed.
That's correct.
Okay. So we're at 3.6 and 3 for engineering is 3.9. So we're 4 million, whatever. It's gonna be, that's what it's gonna be. I still want to recap what I think the cost in continuing on with the remodel is it's $1.4 million, which we've already paid $1.2 million of, I believe. And there's for sure another $200,000 in extra costs. So we're back to $1.4 million. Not addressing the roof, not addressing, unforeseens. So we're going to go from $1.4 million to $4 million. And my perception is that the public is not going to be for that in any way, shape, or form.
So just for a ballpark number, back in 2002, 2003, the cost of putting the current roof system on was about $298,000. And that did not address some of the issues. It was just basically adding it on to the roof that was there. I don't believe there was, Ted would know this, I don't believe there was any tear off of the existing roof. There was some things added, but it was about just under $300,000 back in 2002, 2003 to put the tin on the roof.
So you're saying, Mr. Picard, huh? Mr. Picard, Andy said that it was $300,000 today to remove and replace. So that was 18 years ago you just quoted. So the price has not gone up?
Right in front of me. 2002 is $153,322.14. That's what our records show. And the year after, roof replacement cost, 2003, was $145,404.47. So either way you slice it, it's a lot of money.
Well, it is, yeah. But
We have some firefighters here who would like to address the council.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Council, my name is Joel Carlton. I am a firefighter here.
Could I get you to pull your mask down so we can?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
100%. I'd like to speak to you just primarily from construction experience and just shed a little light on that with my experience for the last 20 years as a primarily custom residential home builder, some light commercial, and then the last 15 years owning a company and being licensed general contractors. What I see kind of a cultural problem with the shift in construction techniques that are being done mostly because of codes and stuff in this country and in this state is I think I see some pretty alarming issues, particularly with the application of lighter residential construction techniques trying to be used in commercial application, commercial and industrial, mostly, I would say mostly probably for trying to mitigate the high cost measures generally. We've kind of shifted culturally towards a kind of what I call a microwave society where we like things done yesterday and we like to get them up and we like to get things up quick. The market moves very quickly. And so that's kind of translated into a lot of techniques that I find detrimental to what I like to call, or what used to be kind of legacy construction. We're not seeing structure standing very long anymore. It's, we don't see multiple generations of families living in the same homes anymore. And so, and consequently, that's kind of translated over into our construction world, or into the commercial world as well. That's what I've seen anyway. That's the main problem I see with the building like that. The techniques that were employed back in the 90s were really more suited for residential application. And that's why you're seeing those problems. When you move into commercial industrial use, we're looking at, when you expand the space of a building that large, the problems that generally come along with residential construction are magnified exponentially on a building like that. So whereas on our general homes, we're looking at maintenance every year. We're going around windows, we're going around doors, we have sealant issues, we got leaking issues, we have problems with vapor barriers and stuff like that. It's much more manageable in that context in a residential home. It's a lot easier to manage. We've got property managers and guys like that in this area that generally take care of those problems. Well, when you expand that to a context of almost 10 times the size of an average small home, with maintenance directors and maintenance personnel that are already spread thin, it just winds up becoming a nightmare. And it's not because necessarily there was anything nefarious being done. It was just the techniques that were employed wind up lending itself to a real problem. Mr. Krupp, to address a little bit, like extra and added hidden costs when it comes to remodels. There's so many unknowns and variables when it comes into that. It's really hard to predict. Every time we get involved in a remodel, generally by the end of it, you're seeing people almost every time spending 50% more or more, even more than that. It's just the nature of the beast. That's the way it goes. I'm just speaking to more guarding against the idea. I know it can hurt fiscally speaking on the front end, putting that much money into a building. But when you're talking about something that has potential of lasting 50 years and actually creating a legacy for the city, for this council, it is usually always better in the long run. And the problems we're seeing now surfacing, I would guess probably started within the first decade of that building's construction. And it's because it's almost impossible, unless you have a full-time staff managing maintenance on that type of construction, it's almost impossible to stay ahead of those problems. And that's been my experience. I've torn into places that are 10, 15 years old and are dealing with the exact same issues. I mean, I could get into different construction techniques that I find detrimental that we've actually stopped using within the last decade that are actually code because we find better ways of doing things. I don't think they're good applications for this. That's why I'm a fan of using techniques, pushing towards techniques like, precast concrete walls and stuff like that when you're working in this type of industrial application. They're gonna stand a lot longer. They're gonna be maintenance free, and I always think it's better in the long run. You'll wind up spending less money overall over the next several decades.
Thank you, Joel.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, we got a vote this fall. We got an election coming up. We can put it on a referendum and just put everything on hold until after 1st of November. I think that's kind of what the people are going to demand. They're going to be outraged at what we're proposing to them.
Mayor?
Yep, go ahead, Aaron.
I still think we need to have high tech. We're still under contract with them on this building right now, and we need to get to the bottom. I'm hearing 150,000. I'm hearing 1.5 million. I'm hearing 3 million. There's a lot of difference in numbers that I'm hearing.
It just depends who you ask, Aaron.
Go ahead.
Ask Andy Picard what he thinks the price tag is going to be at the end of the day, based upon what he's looking at.
Well, I think prior to him trying to give me a number, I think he needs to do more work. He needs to dig in deeper to find out what Dave Schrupp talked about, what are the numbers. And I think we're going to find that they're a lot closer to 2 than they are to 3 million.
Yeah, well, and we could do that. It's going to be another time factor, and it's going to be a little bit of additional cost. I can't imagine it'd be a lot, but he said 100,000. That's to remove and replace. So if we just asked him to open it up so that we can take a closer look at it.
But how much would it be for him to inspect and make sure we get good numbers?
Well, it's going to be hard for him to answer, but it's going to be 25 grand or something. I don't know, Andy, I'm speaking for you. I shouldn't do that.
No, you're good. Okay, just to summarize, right, we're looking at putting together, consolidating all these numbers, like Mr. Schrupp said, into a spreadsheet of, now again, these are all still anticipated costs. There's still a budget. We don't know what we don't know. And there's still a lot of unknowns within that building. If we go in and spend more money in that building and open it up, we can get a lot better idea. Obviously, the more we expose and more we open up, we're going to have a lot better comfort into, what the costs actually are going to be.
And that's going to take how long approximately? Dollars are becoming are the issue.
Just to open it up, it's probably another $30,000, $40,000 to open up all the walls, get everything exposed.
at the rafters.
Yep,
What is it, the concrete floor, I think it was?
yep.
What I missed? I'm sorry, I couldn't. I'm missing the mic. Okay. Did you understand what I said, Andy?
Yes, I did,
Okay.
yep.
Andy, didn't Steve, your foreman on the job, go up and look through the roof, and didn't he give a recommendation that it all was in good shape up there? I believe that's what I heard.
Steve did crawl through the attic space. He did not see any signs of water intrusion or anything like that in the attic space. So he, the initial analysis of it said it looked good. Now, we still don't know if it was a true roof over roof scenario. So I guess, trying to figure out if that roof was placed over the existing roof when it was re-roofed, we don't know that. And how they frame that.
An idea of when we could have this information so we don't hold this project up any longer than we have to.
Yeah, if we get in there for next couple weeks, 2-3 weeks, we could get it open back up.
So not by the 10th?
We could open some of it. Ted, do you remember the roof? What happened?
My recollection is they went over the majority of the old shingles are still there underneath. There was some that were, as they were doing the construction, they had to remove, but for the majority of it, it's all there. That's from my recollection.
What would the impact of that be, Andy, if it was either way? I would assume that if they went over the old shingles, they would have put sleepers down.
Yeah, again, a lot of assumptions.
I would hope so. Yeah. But I mean, I think after 20 years or something, you'd show wear through there if it was sitting right on the aggregate of the asphalt shingles. I would assume, but.
John Andrews, I have a question actually for Chip. With this new building we're now in here, and the fact that you're not able to use the fire hall, what are the issues for you in terms of if things got delayed in terms of being able to function, maybe not well, but being able to?
Well, we can function right now as we are. Moving forward, if it's delayed, we'll start having to worry about making sure that we have a place for a bathroom and decon areas, because we're not right now going deep into the construction area, like I said. So those would be areas that we'd have to look into. Just making sure we have, because right now we're storing a lot of equipment outside, not apparatus, but other equipment in storage boxes. So depending on how far we wait, it determines how long I can keep that in there, because a lot of that stuff can't be in there during winter. So
My interest is making sure that we hopefully make whatever is considered the right decision for Cross Lake. And it sounds to me like we need a little bit more information, but it might take a little more time. And I'm looking at what are the issues if we were to get the extra information and the issues of time.
if we went with the operation of the new building, we would still have the apparatus bay to use. And then we'd have to create the decon area with water capabilities. In the remodel, we would just have to continue with what we're doing and make do with what we have.
And I'm still interested to know what the public thinks, Mr. Mayor. They might say, heck no, or they might say, well, we'd like not to spend the money, but maybe it makes sense. I don't know, Dave.
Well, if we really want to find that answer out, it would be a referendum on the vote, and then we'd find out. If we want to go around and just get opinion, it depends who you talk to. So, depends how realistic that is. But is I mean, do we have the newspapers here? Is there anybody from the newspapers?
They're on Zoom. They both are.
Okay, so I mean, if they could write a pretty extensive little blob on this in the paper and see what kind of reaction you get, that would be one indicator. Yeah. But I think, at the end of the day, it started at 3.6 million for the new project. It's certainly going to be 4 million. And, I mean, we got to be prepared at the end of the day. It could be 4.5 million. So that's kind of what we're talking about. The public is going to be concerned in.
And again, on the remodel, we're looking at almost 2 million if you throw the unknown.
Well, Mr. Schrupp,
and a
you
new
and I,
roof on.
we did, well, sure, if you throw a roof on, but that, we could wait 20 years for that. We don't have to do that. It's that scare tactic. And realistically, we're looking at $1.6 million if we continue on with the remodel with a little bit of gray area. So call it 2 million if you want, but it's not.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I just wanted to reiterate the importance of, there's been a report from an insurance side of things, but the moisture and fungal report and the assessment that I referred to earlier is part of this process, and that will occur as High Tech does the additional removal of interior walls in terms of sheetrock to expose everything. And then they would do their assessment, whatever firm that you would elect to work with. And then the remediation would occur. They would come back on site to test everything to make sure that it is in fact taken care of. This is a very big deal, and the city of Cross Lake is looking to make a substantial investment in this building, spend a lot of money to ensure the safety of its users, firefighters. This is such a big deal in terms of safety and public health and safety that I just want you to know that's part of this process, and that will also add to the timeline. And so,
Well, sure it will. But Mike, if we run into any kind of conditions that are mold or anything close to it, we are going to remove and replace them. So the mitigation part of it should be eliminated because it's going to be new. Now, do we want to go through with the scope and check it out after we're done? Sure. You know, we want to make sure that it's not there, but everything is going to be opened up, visual, and remedied as we get through it. So
I understand.
You know,
I just wanted to, High Tech and Widseth are currently working on a project where we're currently working on this. And it's a process that does take time. And I just wanted you to all be aware of what's protocol. Again, from a professional liability and for the liability of the building owner and all that use it, it's a substantial issue for all of us. And again, the amount of money that you're spending and investing to ensure the safety of the building users, I just want to make sure that everybody understands what's required here. And again, the project that we're working on, there was water infiltration. And so that area of the project, we had to open that up. Braun Intertech came on site, they did their inspections, they made their recommendations. High Tech was able to take care of all that. They came on site and tested it. And I believe we're just now done with that process. So a little over a month is what that took. So
well, they got
I
something
wanted to
done in a
reiterate
month.
the importance of this whole process. Thank you.
We haven't got anything done in a month, so months go by pretty quick. What are we trying to do here today, gentlemen? Are we going to, and everybody, are we going to try to make a motion to go in a direction, or are we going to want High Tech to do a little more exploration, or what? I mean, does somebody want to make a motion in a direction?
Well, I think we need to know the cost, the ceiling, the absolute limit, if we can get there, of what the remodeling is going to cost. And then I'd like to summarize, in addition to that, how we were going to pay for it, in light of Mike mentioning that interest rates are falling to the floor now. I'd also have to see what the life of the building is going to be if we remodel it. And then I'm interested in finding out how much life's on the new building, if we did a new building, and how we.
Well, how are you going to get an answer to that, Dave? I mean, everybody's saying it's a 50-year building. You won't have to touch it. You're going to have to touch it. A big thing like that is going to need some maintenance, you know? So is it substantial or not? You can't look 50 years down the road and ensure the public that you're not going to have to put a nickel into this thing for 50 years. It's crazy. So, you know, we got to go in a direction. We've spent a lot of time on this as in months previous to this, and I thought we were going in a direction. Now we got a little hiccup here, and we're reinventing the wheel, and it's irritating to me, obviously.
Well, to me, this isn't a little hiccup. This is something.
It's a correctable hiccup.
Something, I understand this is something we might have known about a couple years ago.
Yeah, it's not new. I
But
mean,
I don't know how the extent was known a couple of years ago.
well, if anybody looked at that building and saw siding and stuff falling off of it, you know there were some issues. You know, I mean, it's just neglect of 20 plus years. And now we got a few things to backpedal and fix it to get back to where we were.
So can I continue?
Sure, go ahead.
So I summarized what I wanted to see, or I think we need to look at in detail on a document is what we think the new build or the remodel is going to cost. And what we guess the life is going to be. And then I think we need to take a look at what a new building would be and financing options for both. And I do know that we have, I don't know if Mr. Linus can substantiate this, is it over $4 million we have sitting from the phone company?
Yes, it's between $3 and $4 million, depending on the cost of what we're doing with this remodel. But we do have adequate funds to either pay cash for it or we have the ability to bond for it either way.
Okay, so, you know, there is some option that this would be a lasting building if we took some money to help pay for it. So I'd like to look at that before we make any final decision. And I hesitate to dump more money into it by ripping it apart. We kind of get an idea that we've ripped, we keep going, there's all that's going to be left is the studs on 2 walls and a roof.
Yeah, well, that's a pretty extreme statement again, but okay, we know Dave's
Well, but
opinion.
that's exactly what we talked about, was ripping off all of the insulation to see the studs and the exterior side, you know, the
Yeah, but it's
OSB
more
or
than 2
whatever's in there.
walls. It's more than 2 walls and a roof, and that's what you just represented. So,
Right. That's
Aaron,
what
I
I would
would
like
really
to
like
see.
to hear. Okay, we got that. John and Aaron, I'd like to see what you'd like to see happen. I'd like to hear that.
Dave, did you make was that a motion?
No, that's not a motion. We're kind of looking for a direction here
John would like
before a motion is made.
I didn't use the word motion.
Okay.
I'll let you talk, and if you agree, you can use the word.
I
Yeah,
agree
okay.
with part of what you're saying. I think we need to find out what the actual cost is for the reconstruction. But I think we jumped too far ahead too quickly with this presentation today. And I think that presentation this was the wrong time for that to come up. We needed to know what we're dealing with on this building. We're under contract for it with High Tech. We need to get the true numbers so that we know what it is. If it costs us another $30,000, that might be money well spent in the end. Okay, so the part about new building, I think that needs to stop today. I'm giving you my opinion.
Thank you, Aaron.
My opinion is I don't know which is the best way to go. I don't think I want to tear down the current building and take it apart any more than necessary to get information on where we're headed. I do think there's a lot of cognizance of the idea that we need the new way things are constructed currently for both health and safety and efficiency, et cetera. And I do have concerns about putting good money after bad if we have a building that is really not working well.
So I'm not sure what I just heard you say, John. What do you want to do?
I think I like the kinds of things actually that Dave Schrupp said.
Okay, you want to see a top end budget?
So you're saying stop cold here and with it and just look at a new building period and that's the end. Just keep in mind that today, this ended up on the agenda with us getting no prior warning and with nothing being in our packet. And this is the second meeting in a row this has occurred to us.
I'm okay with doing some more investigation on the current building, as Andy suggested. So I'm not saying don't do anything.
I agree with not saying no to a new building. I don't have a problem with that. But we need to stop so that we don't spend money on a new one if we're going to continue with this one.
Right.
We need to know. And I believe you said 2 weeks is what Andy asked for.
Right.
So I think another 2 weeks added on to it shouldn't be a problem. And I don't think our city engineer has ever been asked any questions on it at all.
Wow. Mr. Anglin represents WSN.
I'm not
then,
asking you
so-
to start speaking it, but I think you need to be part of
Okay,
our discussion if, when we have the information.
I also
Okay,
think the
but-
public needs to be part of the discussion somewhere along the way. I'm not sure I want to hold things off for referendum, but I think I need to figure out what the public has some interest in.
so what I would ask, let me give my nickels worth here. I think a 2-week delay to go in there, Andy, and have your guys really tear the corners of the building out, find out what's there, and then come back with a palatable, realistic budget of what do you think it's going to take to do it. You've kind of outlined that for us, but kind of recap it. So next meeting, we kind of know what we're talking about. And then a guesstimate at the life of the building. You know, at 20, 25 years, I've heard that. The new building is 50 years. I've heard that it's 300 grand for the roof, and that's a concern. You know, that could be done 10 years from now if it need be, and it'd probably be a lot more easy to swallow. But so I'm not going to make a motion for that, but I think it's going on with the 2-week exploration and come back with some solid numbers. And I think if you come back with the new building numbers again, I think it should include all engineering fees, all site work fees, so we know what the bottom line is going to be. So it's a true representation of what the price is.
Hello, Council, Mayor and Evan. My name is Mitch Fearban with High Tech Construction. I'm the owner over there. You've met my
Hello,
father,
Mitch.
Greg.
Yep.
So a couple things. If we go in there and start tearing more apart, we're going to start affecting Chief Miller or Low Miller's area because we need to take off sheetrock. And there's a little bit more than just a 2-week investigation. So I just want to kind of clear the air there because we want to get in and see above those headers and what's going on inside the walls, behind the. Then if we have to put it back together, there's going to be some more costs. So I just wanted to clear the air with that a little bit. My opinion here, sitting here today, discussing all this with you guys have a big decision. And we can do our due diligence. Nanny and I will sit down, we'll create our list. We'll talk to Mike about what the engineer's costs and architect costs are and try to present that to you guys. But this is a big decision for the council and for the city of Cross Lake to look at this as the fireman said, remodels are remodels. They're tough. Costs can escalate. If I just wrote a real plain spreadsheet today that said you might spend $1.8 million on this remodel and $3.6 million on a brand new building, and on simple math, you're paying double for a new building than what you're getting for an old building. That's just a real easy picture of it, but you're gonna get a little bit more longevity out of your new building compared to an older building. That's about as simple as we can look at it as a simple contractor that I am. And so, you know, we're gonna do as much on our side to give you guys information that we can, but at the same time, this is gonna have to come down to what you guys want as a big picture for your city. And so that's what I got. Thank you.
And I
Thank you, Mitch.
I agree with High Tech totally that we hired them to do a job, and we didn't hire them to make commitments on exact numbers on what they might or might not find. So I think we're smart enough that if we roll up all the numbers and consider a roof, and then we're going to just have to take a swatch at a number that makes no sense to rip it apart and then have to put it back together again. I mean, that's just throwing more money out the window. But I do agree with Dave that we need to look at both options. And I'm sorry that Aaron misunderstood, but I in my past lives, a lot of the customers that we dealt with over the years, and they're big companies like Boeing and Airbus, they wanted to, before they got into something, they wanted to have some rough order of magnitude or budgetary number just to kind of, some of them could say, well, it's, that's in the range, but then they always came back and they wanted to know the final number. So, and I think time's of the essence here. I think that the more we can do all at one time would be better off for getting the project back on track. So I agree with what the mayor said, that we should look at both and then pick a time to come back. And I'll make that a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Shar, can you recap that motion so that we're kind of clear with what it is?
We're gonna look at exact costs of the remodel as best.
Okay, but now wait, Dave, now you just said that you understand that high tech cannot give us exact costs though. You're
No,
empathetic with that.
We are. We're gonna look at that. They're gonna give us the numbers that they have. And then I think what we have to do is add a little bit more to it for the things that we don't know, that they don't know. You know, like we've heard from several people that you get into this and all of a sudden.
We have to
the
take
numbers-
that risk on. You're right.
Right.
We have to
Yep.
take that risk on.
Yeah, and you've been there too. You know what it could be. You probably have a better idea than the three of us sitting here. So we want to look at that and then get some speculation on what the life would be. But then let's take a look at the building that was discussed here. So we can get closer on the numbers and what that life may be. And then I'd like to have Mike look at how we would pay for either one. So we have some idea of what the impact would be, especially when he mentioned the interest rates are so low and dropping today. So, and then we should be able to make a decision. I don't know how long that's going to take.
But remember, we're not going to be. Sorry. Remember, you're not. You can't, if you spend down the cash that we have on account now, it's going to affect our bond rating and our interest rate.
Right.
So that's going to be a big
But
consideration.
I didn't say we're going to spend every last dime, but it's just.
You're going to have to keep the majority of it where it is.
But I'll let Mike make a judgment on that because I don't know. So
That's what I'm seconding.
Okay, so I'll recap what I think this is. A motion to obtain exact costs of the remodel, including a speculation of the life expectancy, and then to get an idea of the life of a new building and how the city would be able to pay for either the remodel or a new building.
Okay, I need to add something to that, Shar.
Cost of the new building
cost of the new building,
and cost
No.
of
engineering.
Okay, but Shar, you stated that you want to get a cost, an exact cost for the remodel.
well, that's
I totally respect high tech. I've been in that thing. If we're going to ask them to give us an exact cost for it, they are going to inflate that number. And then the city is not going to take any risk. But I think the city needs to take some risk. We need to ask them what their best guess at what the cost is going to be. And leave it open for them, because until they dig into it and find stuff, we don't want them, first of all, not to fix something because they didn't figure it.
Right.
And we don't want them to pad something by half again as much to cover themselves. We got to respect
Without
these
the
guys
word
and
exact.
respect
Yep. That's okay. I'll
Okay.
go along
So-
with removing exact, but use the
We're
word
in
best.
a motion right now, so
Yeah.
okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I'm agreeable to make it.
we're going to take
out the word
comments
exact.
between.
But if we've got a motion on it,
Yeah, I know.
so he can come up and talk even with that.
After,
Well, after the motion.
Yes.
Yeah, afterwards, yeah.
So we've removed the word exact and
So
used
you're
best.
saying we'll spend
Best.
estimated 30,000 for them to tear stuff apart.
No,
Will be in-
no, I'm not proposing that we let them tear anything else out.
Can you give us a reason? I'm not sure they can give us a reasonable.
you can come
I
on.
think they got to do some exploration in there, whether how extensive it is, but they got to knock some holes in there to see what's in areas that are critical.
My comment, this is Mitch Fairburn with High Tech again. My comment earlier was just to explain that we're going to be affecting what the fire department has going on, for one. I think with the information that we have and our ability to put cost estimating together, we can come up with a decent enough number saying, if we take off all the sheetrock here, all the FRP, all the insulation here, and we highlight it and blue beam up a plan, we can come around with a very accurate number saying this is what it could be.
And you can have that by August meeting, which is the 10th.
Yes, we can. Now, with that being said, we're also going to take in a few things like Mayor Nevin said. Let's say there is no vapor barrier underneath the slab. I'll put a line item there saying we'd have to do moisture mitigation system over all the concrete. And what a given percent that is. So we could line item a whole bunch of the problems that could arise, create a spreadsheet that you guys got some information that you can decide off of. The best way to fix the problems is through the construction. So when we do tear open a wall and we see it, that's when we know we got to replace a whole bunch more studs, or we got to replace a whole bunch more headers. When we do it on this piece of paper without tearing it open, we're assuming we're replacing some of that. And that's where the gray area is, that we can't say it's an exact number. And we'll do our very best and our due diligence to do it without a huge forensic investigation. We will take the cost of a forensic investigation from Braun and put it as a line item, saying that's going to be part of this project. Does that make sense?
Yep. It does, Mitch, but is there a tool that you have where you can drill a hole in a wall and stick a probe in there and take a mold test without totally taking the wall apart?
Yes, but as soon as they do find any moisture, the next step is taking the sheetrock off the wall.
Okay, but I mean, that saves us from tearing the wall down to see it. I mean, if you could probe it and find out if there's something in there, that's what we want to find. That's
Right.
what we need to know.
True, but it doesn't always show mold either. It'll show moisture, but we don't know if water's been there or has escaped, leaving mold. So.
All right, well. Okay, so we're really making this motion messy, but the only thing, I'm going to add one more thing to it, is I want realistic numbers from new and to the remodel when they come back here, complete numbers, engineering, site, everything, so that we really have a bottom line number that we're talking about.
I'll agree to that 100%.
Likewise.
Okay, you have a motion and a second. Can a firefighter make a comment? Well, you guys.
That's fine with me, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm Assistant Fire Chief Neil Luzar. Once this process started, I've kind of been quiet through this whole thing, let Mr. Lohmiller do his deal because he's very good at what he does. But seeing all this mold in the building and structural members being just disintegrating, I have a concern for our firefighters. You know, when we go to structure fires, we're dealing with carcinogens from top to bottom. I don't want our firefighters coming back to a fire hall having to worry about mold being an issue and causing cancer. I mean, that just shouldn't happen. We should be coming back to a building that we know is going to be free from any kind of carcinogen. And we should be able to clean our stuff in an area and put our dirty gear in an area and know that when we're going to go into a meeting room, know that it's not going to be affected by any kind of mold or anything like that. I have a concern for our firefighters. And I think that you're just putting a Band-Aid on a fix here now. Mr. Mayor, with all due respect, I think that building has become a hazard. And I don't like the idea of a roof on a roof. I've fought fires and we've done overhaul with roofs on top of roofs, and that space right there is just a ticking time bomb. If there were ever a fire in that building, are there any fire breaks in that ceiling? I have no idea. I mean, if it's just an open airspace, that fire is going to go right through that building. And that's my experience with roofs on roofs. We have major issues with roofs on roofs and doing overhaul and firefighting. That's just, I wanted to say my piece, and I respect everything you guys are doing. There's a big decision to be made. I'm not one for playing and putting a Band-Aid on this building. I just don't like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Okay, Shar?
You ready to vote?
I think I know what I'm voting on.
What was the date again by the council meeting for the information?
10th?
August 10th.
Yeah.
And you're okay with that date? Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Shar.
John Andrews.
Yes.
Aaron Herzog.
Yes.
Dave Schrupp.
Yes.
Dave Nevin.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Moving on to
Chip wants
Chantel,
to
right?
say, Chip wants to add something.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, you brought up your mold study that wasn't paid by the council back a year ago. Can you reveal what that mold test said, since we don't know what it came back with, what the results were?
How would you like me to reveal that?
I'd like it to be, I'd like to see the report, because I want to know how long we've been, exposed to this mold, just in case we have some issues down the road.
Okay. Okay, so,
And at this time,
I wish you,
at this time, I mean, if you don't want to release it until it's covered in the expenses, you could ask to see, or ask Mr. Leonis if we want to have the council approve for payment for that, just so it can be public knowledge of what was the results of that test.
yeah, I would love to share the test with it. I wish that it would have been 2 years ago. We would have acknowledged that a test was taken. But I do think that I should get reimbursed for having that test done. And right now, that test is real valuable information because it shows before any interruption of the building what the mold conditions were. So I'm real glad that I took that test at the time, but I certainly would give it to you.
I guess from a staff perspective, Mr. Mayor, everyone would be interested in what did you know, when did you know it, and why are you waiting till now to share it with us?
That tells me this
Well, Mike,
conversation.
yeah,
Mayor?
it's over, Mike. You and I are, we do not communicate very well. That test was wide open. I had it in my hand. I wanted to give it. Nobody acknowledged that I even had the test done. You were all ticked at me for making a unilateral decision on my own and not getting council approval. So the heck with you saying that I'm hiding it or not showing it to somebody. That has been available since day one. That's the reason I took the test.
Mr. Mayor, respectfully, we've asked for the report and you've withheld it from us.
Mayor,
Period.
Mike, both of you, let's stop and we're going to move on.
Yeah, I've got that test. It's available, and I would love to share it with you. I would ask the council to reimburse me for the cost of it. And if you're going to bring something forward to me, Mike, don't beat around the bush. You bring it at me.
I've done that multiple times, sir.
Okay.
I'll move that we pay for the mold test.
I think we're creating a lot more problems for the city if that occurs, John. So no, I won't second it.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion?
No, the only thing is, Shar, I got to probably abstain from the vote, right?
Yeah, you should. All right, so the motion is to reimburse Dave Devon for the cost of the mold study
And then we'll get the result.
and get results. John Andrews,
I'm saying yes.
Aaron Herzog,
No.
Dave Schrupp.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, let me just add 2 things to that. Shar, have one of the squads come over and pick it up right after the meeting here. I'll have it for them. And the second one, at the council meeting, we could ask Service Master to come over and explain that mold test because, we'll go through it and look at it and do our interpretation. But I think that we could get them to come up and walk through that mold test and tell us what they found at the time they took it. So that might be a good idea to do.
When would you want them to do that?
Well, I think at the council meeting, we're going to be talking about this stuff, on the 10th or something of August.
Okay.
To have it in a public meeting.
I just do have a comment on that meeting of August 10th. I don't want to be in this building until 7 a.m. when the polls open the next morning. So we would need to, be out of here by 6 a.m. just.
By 6 a.m.?
Yeah.
All right, I promise. So that's just a recommendation. We could all look at that thing and come up with our own opinions of them. Those guys are the ones that took the test and are the professionals. I think they should present it. Not to say that I wouldn't give it to you today and you guys can look through it all you want, but I just think that they should tell us what that test meant at the time it was taken.
Do you want to have a motion to have them come in?
Yeah, I would make that motion as long as it's an agreeable to everybody. Yeah.
I'll second it.
Dave Schrupp,
I agree.
Aaron,
Yes.
John Andrews,
Yes.
Dave Nevin.
Yep. Yes.
Motion carries. Dave, do you want to invite them or do you want me to call them?
Well,
I'll call them.
Maybe you should. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
gotta. Okay. Okay.
Are we ready for item 3?
Yep, I would say so. What is item 3? Dechantel is looking for an extension of time. So is somebody here
John
from?
Andrews' view is we should go ahead and let him have it.
Well, John, let's talk about this a little bit. Is there anybody from or from Winseth here that wants to say anything about the project?
I'm here, Mr. Mayor. Dave Reese.
Okay, Dave, why don't you kind of start it out?
Okay. So the contract completion date for the water quality project for substantial completion is July 31st. That's tomorrow. End of day tomorrow. Okay. We received a request from Dechantel Excavating to extend the substantial completion date to August 31st. And their basis for that is difficulties with dewatering the site. That is the question before the City Council this morning, whether or not to grant that request. They're not asking for additional cost at this point. They're asking for solely a time extension. The secondary question to that would be, there's a clause within the contract for not meeting the contract completion date, and that involves liquidated damages. But the city would then have to determine what those damages are, okay? So the second part of the question becomes moot if you grant them the extension.
Okay, Dave, I'd like to add just a couple comments to this. Dechantel came into and put their barricades up the week before Memorial Weekend. They blocked the road off. They did do some grubbing in the next week or so. Then the project sat for, I'm going to say 3 weeks, possibly 4 weeks, until they came in with their dewatering. And during the process, I think we all know that we went for about 6 weeks there with virtually no rain. Now they're getting some rain and they're having more difficulties. I did in the last day, they put the big structures in. So I think, Mr. Reese, does that mean that the dewatering is not as important now?
Not necessarily. It means that they were able to use different methods than what they'd installed around the 1st of July or right around the 4th of July when they started dewatering. Those points silted up time over again, and they tried jetting them to get better drawdown, but it was a constant struggle. So they used a sumping method within their trench boxes that enabled them to get the water down within the trench box area and get those 3 structures installed yesterday. They still have to dewater to get the pond excavated and the storm pipes in. So that's what they're looking for the time extension for. They're going to have to continue to dewater in the pond area to get that completed.
So just so the council knows, you know, John Andrews and myself live on the road. We drive by that multiple times a day. In that time frame, there is very little activity by Dechantel. So my caution is to give them another month extension I don't know that they're gonna, they're gonna drag it out to the last day. They could ask for another one. So I just cautioned it a little bit on that and put an option up. Maybe we could give them 2 weeks or 3 weeks extension. But we just want to get it done and out of here, So that's my comment toward it.
If we agree to the extension.
Microphone?
If we agree to the extension, at the end of the extension, if they haven't met it, does it take away the penalty that's in place?
No,
There's a penalty if.
there's still a penalty
And
enforced.
they don't.
Yep.
Is there any way to put a little more teeth in that penalty where we don't have to come up with damages? We can just get it, just to give them motivation to get it done, or not?
The liquidated damages level that's set in the contract presently is $1,930 a day for every day over substantial completion. Okay, if we are going to go into that discussion, if you're not willing to grant the extension of time, then we would need to take a look at what damages the city will incur after tomorrow. What additional costs are being burdened of the city for that time that it takes to get to completion?
My view is we want
So
the
my
project
question,
done, whatever we can do to get it done. But I think I've seen a lot more activity there in the last 10 days.
Yeah. So, Mr. Reese, you didn't really answer. My question was, is there any way we can put a penalty in there with more teeth in it so that they get it done by the extended time we're going to give them?
Well, it's really tied to the completion date that's set, and you're able to enforce that liquidated damages that's in the contract. In my past experience, the contractor will request an itemization of cost for actual damages. That may be in terms of, because the city is not able to use the project as it was intended, that's the definition of substantial completion, that you're incurring costs due to that. Or there are other costs involving administrative costs from the city staff standpoint, contract administration, prolonged construction observation by your engineer that's going beyond what was originally estimated or budgeted for. Those are the kinds of costs that you can
So do you see
assess.
any costs? Do you see any costs like that we've incurred?
At this stage, I do not.
Yeah. Okay. So it's really, the penalty cause is meaningless.
Well, today.
Yeah.
And
well,
I've looked at the past, the notice to proceed was issued to the contractor effective May 4th. And since then, we can identify about 12 days that could be justifiable as rain days through this week.
Yeah.
Grant them out to the 15th of the month?
Well, they may come back and
30
say there's
days
not
they
enough
asked
time.
for.
But
Be done with it. I don't see any damages to us other than we'd like to have the street fixed up. We'd like to have it not cave in. We'd like to have the project done. And if they think they need 30 days, my view is I'd give it to them. That'd be done before Labor Day.
Well, we really don't have a choice, do we? I mean, if we don't give it to them, we charge them.
I agree with you, Dave.
Yeah. So bottom line, Mr. Reese, is that we want to get it done. So whatever it takes to get it done. But go ahead, John. Is that a motion from you to go ahead and give them the 30 days?
That's my motion.
All right.
I'll second it.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion on it?
All right, Aaron,
Yes.
Dave Schrupp,
Yes.
John Andrews.
Yes.
Dave Nevin.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, that's it, huh?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Dave Nevin,
Yes.
Dave Schrupp,
Yes.
Aaron Herzog,
Yes.
John Andrews.
Yes.
Shar,
Yeah.
would you have one of the squads run down here shortly? And
If I can find him, I'm not sure he's in the building.
Okay. Because I'm not going to be here all day is all. I
Ted
guess I could leave
Strand
it.
said he could bring it to you if you want.
Okay, good. Have him do it. I'll have it here for him.